So, back again. Welcome back. Welcome for the first time. And yeah, gonna go into a few different topics. My main thing, I suppose, so far has been like psychosis, and I'm in a stage of recovery from that. I don't know if you would call it remission or whatever, but as I've mentioned, I do have good days and bad days, and today was 75% good, and then, as often happens after sunset, um, there's an energetic shift. Obviously, it gets dark first and foremost, and that might mean a lot to some people, but to me, it can shake me up a little bit. So, actually, right now, I'm just sort of emerging out of a couple of hours of instability, mood wise, and I said I'm just going to talk about it, and yeah, just express a little bit about that. And I'm going to go into my initial plan before all that happened was to talk about music, and also if you've ever heard of synesthesia, which is a condition, like a, it's not a disease, it's like a, or an illness. It's a condition. It's just a sort of a way or a series of ways that a mind kind of interprets things seemingly differently to other people. So there we go. So we've got communicating as a form of quelling psychotic symptoms if they arise, which is what I'm doing now. Acknowledging the sort of anxiety in my tummy and solar plexus and throat sort of areas as it's going on, knowing that it will pass, and using speech and insight as a sort of way of passing the time consciously. Because a lot of the time when this starts with me, I start getting a bit erratic, my mind will race, and I want a sort of a quick fix for it to stop, the anxiety and the racing thoughts, and the with me and my psychosis, I get a lot of visual things. It used to be predominantly like voices and sounds, and even tactile hallucinations, they call them, or you can feel things touching your skin, or like inside your body, and just there's a lot of stuff basically misfiring, no pun intended. And yeah, so I get a whole series. It's kind of just like a confuddlement of the senses or whatever, I suppose. You've got touch, smell, taste, hearing, sight. We just stick with the five main ones. And yeah, for me, I start seeing things, seeing people's faces popping up, sort of almost like it's outside of me, in three-dimensional space. Yeah, I know when I'm stable and stuff that it's projections, it's people I've seen in my life or during the day or whatever. It's almost like a dream state, the way the in your dream state, you'll often, if you remember your dreams, you'll re-envision people that you've met during the day, or just important people from your life, or it might even be people you've passed by in the street and didn't really pay much attention to, and they'll pop up in your dream, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that person. Because yeah, that kind of thing. But it sort of it happens when I'm awake. So, and I can't really do anything about it. It doesn't really matter what I do. I find it difficult to tell myself that it'll pass, because I don't know if it will pass. If I sort of give into it, and just sit with it, and I don't know what's going to come of it. Is it, I have a lot of and then the mental stuff, mental thoughts and trains of thought and stuff goes along with that, and I'm trying to rationalize what's happening. And a lot of the time I feel like, these faces are people somewhere else in real time, manipulating my energy, manipulating my mind, possibly sort of vampiric type people who are adept at using people's energy fields for their own benefit. And like, I have a whole, it's a big complex web of patterns and thought patterns that affect the mood directly. So the more I resist it, the more it kind of slips from my grasp. Like trying to pick up beads of mercury off the ground, you try to pick them up and they just scatter and get smaller, and it's sort of like that. But you'd think I would have learned after all these years not to do that, but it's just, whatever it is, that's, I suppose, the nature of psychosis is it becomes unmanageable and it runs away with you. So the main thing is to sort of accept it, and know that it will pass, and that whatever it is not permanent, but like, and oftentimes when I've done that and just accepted it and tried to be in a good mood about, seeing these people's faces and hearing what they're saying, and the feeling that their sort of energetic field is like really entangled with my own, so I'll be having bodily sensations, whether in my groin or my face or my feet or hands, and nervous system starts becoming overactive, and I get buzzing sensations, or feel almost like hands touching me, or feel like my energy is draining out of my feet or my groin area, or and as I'm seeing these recurring faces and hearing various things, I've become more and more convinced that this is a person or some sort of entity with the person's face that has sort of infected me, and I need to do something to cleanse my aura or cleanse my mind of this person, and the times that I have just accepted it and let it be, I'll continue seeing the same person for days sometimes, until I just stop thinking about them, stop recalling the image over and over again, the Buddhists and like meditators and things like that, they call this the monkey mind, if someone says to you, don't think about monkeys, that, unless you're prepared for that before I say it, don't think about monkeys. What are you going to think about? Monkeys. And then you try not to think about monkeys even more, and more monkeys are there. So that's an example of the monkey mind. It's sort of like the more you try to resist or make it go away, it almost like multiplies. So I think with a certain sort of person who's like, we call it psychosis, and just that's what I'm going with for now. I do have a plan to emerge from that label in these little videos that I'm making and stuff like that, because nobody really knows what it is. There's no one definition. You'll get lots of people with lots of different definitions of it. Each person who has psychosis is different. They all have different symptoms. Some will have similar things, but it can be quite difficult to actually speak with other psychotic people in a sort of controlled setting or anything like that, you know, where both are being insightful and self-aware enough to be able to describe their symptoms to each other. Do you know, like that situation is quite rare, unless you're getting like a group setting, with being led by a psychosis expert, you know, a psychologist or something like that, which does happen and can be kind of beneficial, but you know, it's all lacking, you know. And then you'll get people saying, oh, it's a Kundalini awakening, you know, that the energy that for most of your life has been laying dormant in the base of your spine has awoken and is moving upwards through your nervous system, encountering blockages, be they physical blockages, you know, where knots in your muscles where nerves are a little bit trapped, or whether it's trauma, you know, psychosomatic sort of trauma, you know, in various parts of the body along these channels that the Kundalini rises up through. You've got 3 channels. You've got your main channel, which is your up the center of your spine, and then you've got a channel either side, which are often referred to as male and female, or hot and cold, or analytical or creative. You know, it's like right and left brain sort of a thing. And there are blockages along the channels, and that's what causes the emotional upset or the rage or the fear or anything, because it's the energy is sort of very, it's powerful, you know, and it's something that's been laying dormant in most people, and then it can like spontaneously awaken. It can awaken with various yoga practices. It can awaken during like drug experiences, things like that, you know. And that's a more Eastern sort of an explanation. A lot of people have adopted that. You'll see that all over the internet now, all over YouTube, people talking about their Kundalini syndrome or stuff like that. But you know, we don't know for sure that that's what it is, you know. Also, we don't know for sure that cannabis causes it, or drugs cause it, or it's genetic. We don't know. Like we just don't know. But I'm just going with the label of psychosis as a sort of umbrella term for what I understand it to be. And it's yeah, it could be, you know, just as people get older and have been, you know, set in their ways of particular habitual thought patterns and different capabilities of the mind and stuff like that, and they're just confronted with different arenas of life, you know, whether it's trauma or new things, maybe being in different parts of the world, in certain types of buildings, different influences, be it like, you know, electromagnetic interferences, by, you know, going in a subway, on a train every day, you know, and to a job you don't like, and you're getting hit with everyone's Wi-Fi and all the electromagnetic signals that are whirring around, and you do that for long enough, and repress your own mind and all the rest of it, you know, that could lead to a state of psychosis as well, in the sense where, you know, you become extremely agitated. The sensations that are happening with your nervous system and within your body become almost like misfiring or frazzled, or, you know, your attention, your inner attention is not single pointed focus, unless you're like looking at your phone or something like that. It's almost like an ADD, ADHD, like an attention deficit thing, where you get a sensation in your hand, you become hyper vigilant of yourself. You know, sensations in the fingertips, sensations in the groin, sensations in the toe, anywhere it can, and your if you're trying to be self-aware and you're following these sensations, but you're also having racing thoughts and attributing the sensations to things that are external, whether it's whatever you're seeing on a screen or other people. It just depends on your own disposition with it. But a lot of it, most of it, is when the internal world, the mind, your own sort of mind, identity, perception and stuff starts becoming more and more misaligned with the sensations in the body, and more and more misaligned with what's going on in the external world. I think the phones and the computers and all that really don't help. I think porn and masturbating to porn, all that kind of thing, is definitely very detrimental. I don't think we even understand the extent to which that can be damaging for people. I think even the most sane, healthy people in the world will tell you that after the age of 20 maybe, that masturbating to porn frequently makes you feel absolutely terrible. I think most people will agree on that. But just watching YouTube videos and getting your dopamine hit and flicking through shorts and having your attention span becoming less and less and less, a few seconds here and there watching videos or flicking between messages, and so much of your internal reward system, you're feeling good. It's like, oh, I'm waiting for that, I'm anticipating a message coming in, or an email, or a new video to come out, or I'm flicking through a load of videos hoping I'll find one that's going to make the dopamine drip start again. So much of it, more and more these days, is becoming externalized. And we have always sought pleasure externally, but generally it wasn't as fractured and with such small time allotments as it is now. We would have maybe gone out to watch a football match, which is an hour and a half, and you get a single pointed focus with a lot of other people in real time, standing around a football pitch for 90 minutes. That's obviously seeking pleasure and entertainment externally, but it's a totally different thing than watching 500 shorts in a row on your phone with nobody else around. There's no energetic exchange with what you're watching, or there is, but it's getting, tangled up in the phone. You're touching metal and glass and plastic, and, we are sensitive to those things. We are 70% water and electricity and a bit of matter in there as well. That's mostly what we are. So when we're holding this thing that is zero water and a lot of electricity and stuff like that, with copper and gold and glass and all sorts of currents going through it, and it's bringing in Wi-Fi and data signals and Bluetooth and all that, like, directly into our little 70% water hand, and we're holding this thing for hours and hours and hours every day, or it's in the pocket, or close by, and we sleep with it beside our heads and all. It's and then start relying on it for how we feel internally, and then when we're faced with, who knows what we're burying down into the subconscious with all this, by repeatedly doing this all the time. And and then when that starts to bubble up, it can be quite difficult to deal with. So that's where I find myself, because I use the phone a lot. I've been using it more and more and more sort of as, yeah, to help me emotionally regulate and all that. And I'm never happier than when I don't have the phone. There's been a few times over the last 12 months while cycling and camping out and all this kind of stuff where I just didn't have the phone. I lost my first phone that I brought with me, and I didn't replace it for 2 weeks. And I was navigating without Google Maps. It was pretty simple. It was pretty much just cycle north along the coast of Spain and find a beach to sleep on every night. So I did that for 3 months, kind of taking my time and finding a nice place here and there. But the 2 weeks, or there was actually 3 weeks in total, where I didn't have a phone. But yeah, it's like an alien concept to most people at this point. Unplugging from the matrix, as in not having a phone for 2 weeks. People just don't do that. For the most part, they don't detox from it. But when you do, which I did, you start to notice just how many people are using the phone. It's really crazy, and the way people act. I remember maybe back in 2014, 15, it was sort of when smartphones were, they'd kind of taken off, but they weren't really, they're obviously not as embedded as they are now, but at least where I was from. But I remember I was walking down the street and there was a woman walking towards me, and she had both hands on her phone. She was holding the phone with both hands, up in front of her face, with her head down, not looking where she was going. This is a phenomenon now that we see all the time. We probably do it ourselves. We've developed the skill of walking along while looking at our phones and not crashing into someone or whatever. Well, not everyone, but I remember being really surprised about this maybe 11 or 12 years ago, and she didn't see me, and I moved out of her way, and she just kept going and didn't apologize. I don't think she even noticed me, even though I brushed against her nearly. And then I turned around sort of in a bit of disgust, and was like, is she going to turn around and acknowledge that she nearly pushed me into the road? And I looked at her, and there was an overhanging tree on the other side of a wall with the branches coming out over the path that I had subconsciously ducked my head under moments before. I didn't even notice, because I was aware of my environment, and I just ducked my head under those branches. But her hair, which was in a bun, big mop of kind of longish curly hair, right, got tangled in the branches of the tree, and it brought her to a halt. Right? And she kept looking at her phone up in front of her face, and just kept and started marching. She didn't look up from the phone, and she eventually just bowled ahead and untangled her hair, luckily, from the branches, and just kept going, looking at her phone. And I was like, what in the name of all that is holy just happened there? Didn't look up, didn't look behind her to see was there some sort of fucking animal after swiping at her head from behind a bush or anything. No, just was happy to have her head tangled in a tree. Whatever was on that phone, I have no idea, but it must have been good. Maybe she was about to, maybe she was just after making 10 million on Bitcoin. Who knows? But yeah, that was the first time I saw it. And fast forward to just last summer, I remember cycling into a town and just seeing everyone in public, every single person, except for, I remember, two really old people sitting in the park. I mean, people in their 90s or whatever, sitting on the bench in the park as they do. And they were the only people not looking down at their phones. Every single person, whether walking, sitting down, in their cars, sitting outside cafes, standing outside a store, whatever, everyone had a phone in their hand. Most had their head down looking at the phone. Everyone. I remember seeing a 6-year-old little kid on a scooter going through the park looking at a phone as he scooted gangs of teenage girls, 4 or 5 of them, and usually they'll be going along giggling and pointing at stuff and clinging onto each other and being all dopey and excited and ridiculous, and they were all just walking, looking at their phone. This was just one town that I noticed in Spain, and I was like, I hadn't had my phone for 2 weeks at that point. I had become sort of detoxed from it. I had all the little pangs of, oh, I'd love to listen to music, or oh, I'd love to take photos, or I'd love to send a voicemail or have a chat with someone via text message. All those sort of impulses to do that, the habitual impulses, were gone at that point, and I had been like, yeah, I don't, what the fuck do I need a phone for? I'll let people know that I'm still alive at a certain point, but like even that, people like, but I can't go without my phone because people will think I'm dead, or I won't be able to contact people, or I won't be in constant, immediate touch with every single person in my life. Do you know what I mean? Like, people shouldn't have the ability to be able to just tap their way into your awareness whenever they want by sending you a message. Like, you shouldn't allow that. We never allowed it before, up until 20 years ago, So I was just, yeah. And it became apparent to me that I don't need to let people know that I'm alive. If they're worried about me being dead and not being in contact, that's on them. I am alive, and I'm having a great time traveling through this country, and little adventure, well, quite a big adventure, but I had to pause there for a second, lost my train of thought, but I was talking about phones and unplugging from the Matrix. So yeah, if you've listened this far to previous videos, you'll know my shtick about being in survival mode and making that work for you, and about it being the natural state of human beings, not what we're led to believe that it's some mode or way of living or thinking that you shouldn't avoid at all costs. What are you doing in fight or flight mode? Which is sort of correct, but yeah, without the phone all the time, it becomes, you start returning to your more natural state, and then going into a town and seeing everybody, babies in pushchairs with holding an iPad, just absolutely bamboozled by the colours and the sounds and whatever, and the parents standing behind them, not speaking to each other or really monitoring the environment or anything, also on their phones, and usually vaping. It's like, yeah, it is literally like the Matrix. And when you're in it, which I'm back in it now, I've been back in it for a while, you don't notice the extent of it until you unplug. And yeah, it can be difficult to do a lot of things, your finances, or keeping in touch with people for your job, or finding cheap deals for stuff online and all the rest of it. But yeah, it's definitely advisable to limit the use. Just, put it into perspective how unnatural it is, and how much it interferes with your biochemistry. And I would suggest that psychosis and psychosis symptoms have increased, not only with the rise in population or whatever, but because of phones, not just the content people are consuming, because that could be anything, Let's just call that data for the moment, but or information, but I think the act You know, you can see how it's changed people's postures, the head, the phone, neck, or whatever. That the head sort of juts forward and people slump down, and they're not aware of their posture, and they can spend hours and hours and hours like that, and then wonder why they have headaches, and that can lead to painkillers and all. Yeah, it's just really everything is sort of set up at this point to sort of keep us sick. A lot of the world is it's about providing, sort of harvesting people's attention and life force from them, and getting paid for it. Whether that's, people sitting around watching TV, as was the more sort of traditional way, but now everyone is on the phone, and most likely paying for various services on it, and paying for the phone itself and internet and all this thing, and giving away their health and their posture and everything. Because one thing I did learn from yoga and Pilates and being fairly, not an exercise freak all my life, but if you have good posture and maintain a decent posture and work on improving your posture and strengthening your neck muscles and being more flexible in your hips, not sitting on chairs and couches, and kind of sit on the ground if you can, or at least don't get stuck in one seated position for too long or anything like that. That's a good 70% of your issues managed, because with an erect spine and good posture and flexibility, that's, you're keeping your body wants to be healthy. It's designed to be healthy. It's just all these things that pull us in bad directions. Sitting on couches, just sitting for too long. Chairs are unnatural. Obviously there's logs in the forest and stones and whatever that we could sit on where we are in the exact same position as a chair, but they're not too comfy. You don't really end up sitting on those in nature for too long. It's much more beneficial and comfortable to squat, for example. How many people you realize that squatting is not just about lifting fucking 300 kilos or repeatedly squatting to get a more muscular arse for your tight jeans. Squatting is a resting position. It's not, you'll see around a lot of Asia, you'll see people squatting, and a group of guys playing cards, and they're not sitting on chairs at a table, they're squatting and throwing cards on the ground, and they can stay like that for hours. Around here in Nepal, you see people gathering around a fire, and people in their 70s and 80s, they're still able to squat all the way down, and they can stay there for as long as they want, and they don't need a chair, and it's very comfortable and it's very beneficial, and they're flying up and down the sides of hills well into their 70s and 80s, because you can maintain flexibility by squatting. You're keeping your knees flexible, you're keeping your hips flexible. When you're in the squatting position, you can kind of roll your ankles and keep your ankles flexible, and you can do a lot of it's a good, grounded, solid position to squat, and it helps with digestion to be able to squat like that. It can extend the colon and all that, and like Western throne toilets, like we're all used to, they're unnatural as well. We've all, for millions of years, whatever it is, we squatted down to the ground to take a dump. We didn't sit at that angle, sitting on, we go from the couch to the toilet, and then when we get into bed, we try and lie down flat, and our lower back and everything is fucking aching, and then we lie there on 2 or 3 pillows, holding the phone up with the head jutted forward, absolutely, and doing it day in, day out. It's just, it's literally like it's like life, all these things are trying to pull us into the fetal position. It's just like pulling us into, it's pulling us backwards in our development. Do you know what I mean? Like if you look at yogis, people who are into flexibility or doing yoga asanas and all that, it's all about, so we're in the womb in the fetal position. You can imagine that with the knees tucked up and we're kind of, our spine curved forward and our head down, and that's the early stages of development. And then we eventually come to be able to sit up as a young child, and then we can kneel, and then we can crawl, and all the while our spine is becoming more erect, and then we can eventually stand up and walk and run, and all that. And then in those years, while we're able, from 2 years old up until however old, we're supposed to be advancing our flexibility. We're supposed to be going the opposite of the fetal position, like being able to touch the bottom of our feet off the top of our head from behind. We're supposed to go the other way. I don't know what position you would call that, but yeah, that's the way we're supposed to be going. But now we seem to have, not be embracing that as a challenge anymore, and we just do not want to get out of the fetal position. I'm sure most people sleep in the fetal position also, so it's just a huge stunting in our development, just looking at it that way. I don't know if that's going to come across as making sense, but yeah, so as I alluded to at the start of this, I was quite anxious and all that, and now it's 36 or 7 minutes, and yeah, I've spoken and communicated my way out of it, which is nice, 35 minutes, 37 minutes, and I'm back to okay. I still have music and synesthesia on the shelf. I don't know if I will continue on and go into it in this video, but yeah. So there is an example of how you can start speaking about if you're experiencing psychosis symptoms or mania or depression or whatever it is that you're going through. Like there's nobody around here listening to me. I'm talking to you. Well, I'm recording now, but there's no one around. I'm just listening to my own voice, trying to be more aware of myself. I was hyper self-aware of sensations of my body and everything at the beginning, and now I've relaxed. And my hands are waving around, and I'm just like expressing myself freely. I'm not trapped by the racing mind and the anxiety and stuff like that. So hopefully you've followed this little journey of 40 minutes and how you can use communication and listening to your own voice as a way of emerging from difficult feelings and all the rest of it. So yeah, my dinner is heating up. Probably can't see it now beside the fire. I've got a couple of eggs boiled and some salt to go with them. And yeah, so I'm going to tuck into that soon. And yeah, I think I'll leave music and synesthesia maybe for after my food or for a later video. So yeah, the overall theme there, emerging from anxiety, sort of acknowledging the benefits of good posture. The body is in most cases, unless you have some sort of autoimmune condition or any of the plethora of things that can be wrong with someone, especially if you're born that way or whatever. But in general, the human body is designed to be healthy unless we're doing things to it to make it overwork. and eventually health is lost through those avenues of malpractice in regards ourselves. But like, we're supposed to live a very long time in general health, and fade away kind of slowly at the end. Yeah, so it's not supposed to be such a massive struggle to be healthy and happy. It's just the way the world is set up. You could say corporations, governments, all this capitalistic type of thing have found every which way at this point to take our attention, to get us to willingly hand over our energy and health and happiness to them and pay for the fucking privilege of doing that. So unnatural. Going back to the first video or whatever. Process of elimination. Is it natural? Is it unnatural? And the phone is majorly unnatural. So there you go. Try and reduce your phone time. If you can find a way to do that, you'll see the benefits. And yeah, I'm going to have my dinner now. It's been a pleasure talking. Hope you enjoyed listening, and have a good day. No matter what you're going through, the truth is there.